I want you to imagine, just for a second, the software you use every single day at work.
Okay.
Maybe it's a CRM, that one massive spreadsheet, or even just your email inbox.
Right.
Generally, that relationship is, well, it's pretty one-sided. You're the driver. The software is the car.
It just sits there. It's a tool, a very fancy digital hammer waiting for you to swing it.
Exactly. It's passive. It holds your data, but it doesn't do anything with it until you give the order. But what if that software stopped waiting? What if, instead of just storing customer data, it noticed engagement was dropping and, decided to email a client on its own?
Okay.
Or what if it navigated your internal finance systems, figured out a discrepancy with a vendor, and just executed a payment, all without you clicking a single thing?
It sounds a little like sci-fi or maybe a dream for a very overloaded manager.
Right.
But we aren't talking about the future. This is right now. We are crossing what you might call a quiet line in the modern workplace.
A quiet line. I like that.
We're moving from helpful assistants, the chatbots we've all gotten used to a world of operational doers. We call them digital operators or AI agents.
And that shift from assistant to operator, that is exactly what we're unpacking today. We're diving deep into a really fascinating new analysis by Johan Steyn, who's a prominent AI thought leader. The piece is called The Digital Workforce Moment: Why AI Agents Are No Longer Just Software.
And that title really gives the game away, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's a huge piece because Steyn is challenging the fundamental way we think about enterprise tech. His whole argument is that as soon as software has agency, the ability to act on its own, you can't manage it like IT infrastructure anymore.
You have to manage it.
You have to manage it like a person.
Which, I have to admit, on the surface, it sounds like we're just, anthropomorphizing code. It sounds like a metaphor.
It does.
But as we went through the source material, it started to make a scary amount of sense. So the vision for this deep dive is to figure out why that distinction matters so much. We're going to look at the risks, the governance gaps, and essentially the HR policies you didn't know you needed for your code.
Exactly.
Like
Because
that.
if you don't have those policies, you are basically handing the keys to your business over to something that acts like an employee but doesn't have a conscience.
Okay, so let's start with the history here, just to set the stage. Steyn maps out this whole evolution of enterprise software. It feels like we've gone through a few distinct eras. Right?
We absolutely have. And understanding this evolution is so critical to seeing why agents are so different.
Okay.
So if we look back, the first era was really about systems of record. Think of those huge enterprise databases from the 90s, the 2000s.
Right.
Their job was just to store information. You put data in, you took data out. It was a digital filing cabinet. The value was in the memory.
Useful, but totally passive. Here's our customer list. Here's our inventory.
Then we moved into the era of automation. This is where we got systems of engagement.
So things get a bit more active.
A little more active, but still very rigid. This is your classic, if this, then that. If a customer fills out this form, then send this specific email template. It followed a script.
Deterministic. It followed the tracks that the programmer laid down. It couldn't improvise.
Exactly. It was brittle. But now, according to Steyn, we're entering the era of systems of action. And this is the world of the AI agent.
Okay.
And the key difference here, and I can't stress this enough, is interpretation. An agent isn't just following a rigid script. You give it a goal, like resolve this customer complaint.
Right.
And then it has to figure out how to navigate all the business systems to actually achieve that goal.
That distinction, the how, is doing a lot of work there.
Yeah.
In the old world, the human defined the how in the code, line by line.
And now the model infers the how. It creates its own path. Steyn gives some really concrete examples of what these things can do. We're not just talking about drafting an email. We're talking about opening a case in a CRM, updating a customer record, creating a purchase request, even scheduling interviews or reconciling payment exceptions.
That one, reconciling payment exceptions, really stood out to me. Because every single one of those examples involves a transaction. It involves changing reality.
Yes.
When you reconcile a payment, money moves. When you escalate a compliance issue, a legal process starts. These aren't just suggestions anymore.
It changes the state of the business.
Yeah.
That is the definition of agency.
And it's interesting because the whole industry is betting the farm on this.
Oh, completely.
We saw it with Microsoft's Ignite 2025 announcements. They're openly framing Copilot and these agents as the future operating model for a company. It's not a feature, it's the engine.
Absolutely. And you just have to look at ServiceNow. As of what, January 2026, their entire investor narrative is tied to this idea of agentic capability.
They're not telling investors we have a better chatbot.
No, they're saying we have agents that do the work. Steyn points out this is mainstream now, not some fringe experiment. They're selling productivity.
And the productivity argument is, I mean, it's intoxicating.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
If you can have a software agent handle 4,000 vendor disputes a night, that saves an incredible amount of human time. It's the holy grail of efficiency.
But this is where it gets really interesting for me and maybe a little concerning. You said do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds great. But there's a friction point there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
This is where Steyn's analysis goes from cool tech trend to serious risk management.
The friction point is exactly what we just touched on. Action changes the state of your business. We really have to distinguish between, say, generative AI risks and agentic AI risks.
Okay, so break that down for us.
Well, if you ask ChatGPT for advice on a marketing plan, and it hallucinates, it tells you to market your vegan burgers to cattle ranchers.
Right.
You, the human, you just ignore it. You roll your eyes, you close the tab, you move on. No harm done. The risk is contained.
It's an embarrassing draft, not a business disaster.
Exactly. But an agent isn't in a sandbox. It's live. It's in the production environment. It has write access to your database. If an agent takes an action, that action is real.
And Steyn warns that the errors here, they might not be these obvious explosions. He says they might be subtly wrong.
Subtly wrong. That phrase gave me chills when I read it.
Me too. It's somehow worse than catastrophically wrong.
It is, because you don't see it immediately.
Right.
Imagine an agent that's reconciling payments, but it's miscategorizing one type of tax liability, just because it misunderstands a nuance in the tax code for one tiny region.
And it does this quietly, efficiently, thousands of times.
Thousands of times. So you don't see that error when it happens. You see it at month end.
Or worse, during an audit 6 months later.
Or even worse, when a regulator knocks on your door because a customer complains somewhere along the line. You have a digital worker making mistakes at the speed of light, and no one is checking its homework until it's way too late. That's a complete nightmare scenario. And it's not just about mistakes. It's security, too. That's a huge part of Steyn's analysis.
Absolutely.
When you have agents plugging into your core systems, finance, HR, customer data, that identity and access layer suddenly becomes the battlefield.
And we have a very recent example of this, don't we? The source mentions a disclosure from January 2026 about ServiceNow.
Yeah, there was a disclosure about a critical flaw in some of their AI-related components. And obviously, all software has bugs, but the context here is what's so vital.
It is. In the past, if you hacked a database, you stole data, which is bad.
Very bad.
But if this kind of flaw allows an attacker to manipulate an agent or use prompt injection to trick it, they aren't just stealing data. They could theoretically command the agent to perform actions.
Like transfer funds, approve requests.
Delete records. It's like stealing the ID badge of a manager who has approval authority. The hacker doesn't even need to know how to use the system. They just tell the agent what to do. The agentic capability expands the attack surface in a huge way. The identity of the agent becomes as valuable as the identity of your CFO.
Exactly.
And this all leads to what Steyn calls the governance gap. Most organizations, they just haven't answered the basic questions like, who owns this agent? Is it IT? Is it the business unit like HR or finance?
It's that classic corporate standoff. IT says we just manage the server it runs on. Finance says, well, we didn't write the code.
But the big question is accountability.
Yes. Who is accountable if it causes a financial loss? If an autonomous agent makes a bad trade or approves a fraudulent payment, who gets fired? The CIO, CFO, the software vendor.
I can just picture that meeting where everyone's pointing fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to the core of Steyn's argument. He says, treat agents like employees. And he really emphasizes this is not a metaphor.
No. It is a literal instruction for governance. It's a survival strategy. If you treat it like software, you'll just install it and forget about it. If you treat it like an employee, you apply management.
Okay, let's unpack this HR for robots idea. What does that actually look like in practice? It has to start with a job description, right?
Correct. Step one is role design. You wouldn't hire a human and just say, go into the office and do stuff.
Right.
You give them a title, you state their purpose, you list the tasks they're allowed to perform. Steyn argues you must do the exact same thing for an agent. You have to formally define the job role for the software.
And crucially, You have to define what it must never do.
That negative definition is so important. You can process invoices up to $500. You must never process an invoice over that without a human signing off.
Or you can draft emails, but you can never hit send on a contract.
Exactly. Those guardrails have to be hard-coded.
I love the next step he suggests. The probation period.
It just makes so much sense, doesn't it? You don't give a new junior employee the keys to the server room and the company credit card on day one.
No, you watch them. You review their work.
And Steyn suggests you place software on probation using something he calls shadow mode.
Okay, so explain shadow mode. How does that actually work?
Think of it like a flight simulator that's running in parallel to the real airplane. The agent gets all the real data, say all the incoming invoices. It analyzes them and decides what it would do.
But it can't actually do it.
Exactly. It just logs its decision, I would approve this invoice. But the wire to the bank is cut. It's just role-playing. Then a human comes in and reviews that log. They check the agent's homework.
Okay, it got 99 out of 100 right.
And only once it's proven it understands the nuances do you graduate it. Maybe you move it to a co-pilot mode where it drafts the action and a human just has to click approve.
Because as he points out, in finance and HR, small errors are reputational disasters. You don't want your AI agent accidentally firing someone or leaking salary data because it misunderstood a prompt. You only give it full autonomy once it's earned that trust.
Exactly. And that ties right into the third step, access control. It's the old principle of least privilege.
We talk about this in cybersecurity all the time, but for people.
It applies doubly here. We have this tendency to give software admin rights because it's just easier than figuring out all the specific permissions.
Just give the bot access to everything so it doesn't get stuck.
Steyn warns that is a recipe for catastrophe. Give the agent the absolute minimum access it needs to do its job and no more.
And segregation of duties.
Yeah.
That applies to software too.
It has to. If one agent initiates a payment, a different entity, either a human or another, separate software agent, should be the one to approve it. You never let one agent own the whole chain from request to payment. That's how fraud happens, whether the perpetrator is carbon-based or silicon-based.
That's such a shift in mindset. We're used to thinking of software permissions as just admin or user. This is way more granular. It's about functional boundaries.
And context really matters here, too. Steyn brings in a really specific regional angle that I found fascinating. He talks about South Africa and the broader African continent.
Yeah, that stood out to me. Why does geography matter here? Is it about specific regulations?
It's more about the operational environment. Steyn uses South Africa as a proxy for any resource-constrained environment.
Okay.
In those markets, organizations are often dealing with really stretched teams. High vacancy rates, skills shortages, they've got fragmented data, tons of legacy systems, old mainframes that don't talk to the cloud.
And at the same time, there's this immense pressure to improve service delivery and catch up with global standards.
And here's the kicker. They can't just balloon headcount. They can't just go out and hire 5,000 people to clear a backlog. It's too expensive. The talent might not even be available.
So when a vendor comes along and says, hey, this digital operator can do the work of 50 people for a fraction of the cost, that's not just a nice to have.
It looks like a miracle cure.
It looks like the only way to survive.
Right. But Steyn warns this is exactly where the danger lies. If you're rushing to deploy these agents to plug gaps in a sinking ship, you might be tempted to skip the governance. You might say, we don't have time for a 6-month probation period, just turn it on.
And because of all those legacy systems and the fragmented data, the risk of an agent making a mess is actually higher.
It's a total paradox. It's a high-stakes environment where you need the help the most, but you can afford the errors the least.
And that's why he says we need to contract for reality, not hype.
Exactly. I mean, we're seeing deeper integrations all the time. There were reports in January 2026 on Anthropic's model supporting ServiceNow's agent ambitions. The tech is getting better, the brains are getting smarter.
But buyers need to demand clarity on the body.
Clarity on what, specifically? Logging, monitoring, incident response. If this agent messes up, I need to know exactly why, when, and how. I need a full audit trail.
You need to be able to ask, why did the agent reject this loan application?
And if the answer from the vendor is, we don't know, it's a black box, then you cannot deploy it in a regulated industry, period. You need to know who to blame. Is it the vendor? Is it the model provider? Or is it me?
And ultimately, it's always you.
That's the hard truth of leadership. You can outsource the labor, but you can't outsource the risk.
It really all comes back to that human element, doesn't it?
It does.
It feels like for the last few years, we've been terrified that AI is going to replace us. But Steyn kind of turns that on its head.
He does. He references an interview with ServiceNow's CTO, which I thought was very grounding. The CTO basically said, we're human beings. We bring things to the table that AI doesn't. It's not just about raw productivity. It's about oversight. In a world of autonomous agents, the human role shifts from doer to overseer.
Steyn's conclusion really drove this home for me. He says the immediate benefit is speed. And sure, we all want things done faster, but the long-term prize is trust.
Trust is the currency of business. Think about it. If you deploy an agent and it corrupts your customer data, you lose trust in your systems of record. If you deploy an agent and you can't explain why it made a decision, you lose trust in your governance. And if you lose trust, speed is irrelevant. It doesn't matter how fast you're going if you're driving off a cliff.
So, we need to trust that humans remain accountable for the outcomes. The AI can do the work, but the human owns the result.
That is the line. That's the line worth defending.
It's a lot to take in. I mean, we're moving from a world where we just bought software, installed it, and maybe ran a training session.
Yeah.
Now we're entering an era where we have to essentially interview, hire, train, supervise, and maybe even discipline our code.
It's a whole new operating model. Right. And the organizations that figure out this HR for robots structure early are the ones that will succeed. The ones who treat it like just another plug-and-play feature are the ones who are going to stumble hard.
It creates a new layer of management. The manager of the future isn't just managing people. They're managing a hybrid workforce of humans and silicon agents.
And frankly, most managers are not ready for that yet.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought. We've talked about treating AI agents like employees, job descriptions, probation, access badges. But let's take it one step further, into the uncomfortable reality of management.
Go.
If an AI agent is effectively an employee in your company, making financial decisions, moving data, executing tasks, should it also have a performance review? And here's the real question. If it fails that review, if it costs the company money or makes a bad call, do you fire the software? Or do you fire the human manager who deployed it and failed to supervise it?
That is the uncomfortable question every single leader needs to be asking themselves right now. We all want the power of agency, but are we ready to accept the liability that comes with it?
Something to mull over as you look at your own digital workforce. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.